Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm in regional sales, which means I'm on the road constantly. Mondays, I'm in Philadelphia. Wednesdays, I'm in Boston. Fridays, I'm flying down to Charlotte. Most people complain about business travel, but I've learned to make it work for me. The real perk isn't the hotel points or the per diem. It's the airline miles. I don't spend them carelessly. Every flight, every connection, every delay sitting in some airport terminal adds up in my account. I've been stockpiling them methodically since I started this job. Why? Because my mom lives in Portland, and she's getting older. My sister moved to Austin 3 years ago. When family needs me, I don't want to stress about affording a last-minute ticket. Those miles are my safety net, my way of making sure I can be there when it matters. I'd known her since college. We weren't best friends, more like solid acquaintances who stayed in touch through social media and occasional coffee meetups. She worked in marketing at a local firm, rarely traveled for work, and seemed perfectly content with her routine. We met up at a coffee shop downtown on a Saturday afternoon. I was telling her about my latest trip to Denver, how I'd managed to get upgraded to first class using my status. She seemed surprised when I mentioned that I earned miles with every flight. I explained that it was part of the frequent flyer program, and after 8 years of constant travel, they really add up. She asked how many I had. I should have dodged the question. I really should have. But I didn't think anything of it at the time. I told her around 250,000, maybe more. I said I hadn't checked in a while. Her eyes went wide. She started listing all the things someone could do with that many miles. I explained that I was saving them for family emergencies or visits, especially since my mom wasn't getting any younger. She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. 2 weeks later, she texted me asking if we could grab lunch. I said sure. We met at the same coffee shop. She ordered her usual latte, and we chatted about work and life for a bit. Then she leaned forward, smiling like she was about to share the most reasonable request in the world. She mentioned that she'd been thinking about those airline miles I had. I acknowledged that I remembered our conversation. She started explaining how her boyfriend and she had been wanting to take a trip together. Just a long weekend somewhere warm, the beach, some sun. She said they both desperately needed a break. I told her that sounded nice. She agreed enthusiastically, then complained about how expensive flights were right now. She said they were ridiculously expensive. Then she mentioned that she'd remembered I had all those miles just sitting there. I felt my stomach tighten. I knew exactly where this was going. She asked if I could gift her some. She clarified that she wasn't asking for all of them, obviously. Just enough for 2 round-trip tickets to Cancun. She estimated maybe 60 or 70,000 miles. I took a breath, trying to keep my tone polite. I told her I appreciated her thinking of me, but I couldn't do that. I explained that I've been saving those miles for years, and I needed them for my own travel and emergencies. Her smile faltered. She pointed out that I wasn't using them right now. I clarified that I was saving them. I said that was the point. She pressed me not to be stingy. She argued that I had 250,000 miles, so 60,000 was nothing to me. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the number. I said they were mine. I'd earned them through years of work travel, and I had specific plans for them. Her face flushed. She challenged my claim about specific plans. She reminded me that I'd said I was saving them for emergencies, which meant they were just sitting there doing nothing. I countered that saving them for something important wasn't the same as doing nothing with them. She insisted that her vacation was important. She complained that they hadn't had a vacation in over a year. She pointed out that I flew all the time and could probably earn 60,000 miles back in like 6 months. I told her that wasn't the point. I said they weren't hers to give away. She crossed her arms and argued that if I wasn't using them, it was basically a waste. She accused me of hoarding miles while people who actually wanted to enjoy life couldn't afford to. I felt my patience snap. I told her I worked 50 hours a week and spent half my life in airports and hotels away from everyone I cared about. I said those miles were the one thing that made it bearable. I insisted I wasn't hoarding anything, that I'd earned them and was keeping them for myself. She said she didn't realize I was this selfish. I fired back that I wasn't selfish for wanting to keep something I worked for. She dismissed me with a single word, telling me to forget she asked. She grabbed her purse and stood up. Before leaving, she said she thought we were friends, but clearly, I only cared about myself. She walked out without another word. I sat there staring at my coffee, half expecting her to text later and apologize. She didn't. Instead, she posted a vague status on social media that night about how some people have so much but refuse to share with those who have less. I didn't respond. A mutual friend reached out asking what happened, and I gave her the short version. She told me I'd done nothing wrong. A few weeks later, I heard she'd complained to several mutual friends about me, painting herself as the victim who just wanted a little help. Most people saw through it. One friend even told me she'd asked him for money to cover the flights after I said no, and he'd turned her down too. I haven't heard from her since. No apology, no attempt to reconcile. Honestly, it's not a loss. Anyone who thinks they're entitled to something I spent 8 years earning isn't someone I need in my life. I used 70,000 miles last month to fly to Portland when my mom had a health scare. I was there within 12 hours of getting the call. That's exactly why I saved them. And I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. I'm a manager at a mid-sized retail store. We sell electronics and home goods. Nothing fancy, but we do decent business. Last month, this woman came in. She had that look. You know the one. Expensive bag, designer sunglasses indoors, and an attitude that could cut glass. Let's call her Karen. Karen walked straight up to the register where my cashier, Jenny, was working. She demanded to speak to a manager about our return policy. Jenny tried to explain our 30-day return window, but Karen cut her off and said she wanted to talk to someone in charge. I came over and introduced myself as a store manager. I asked how I could help. Karen pulled out this blender from a shopping bag. The box was beat up and covered in dust. She said she wanted a full refund. No receipt, no proof of purchase. I told her I would need to look up her purchase in our system. I asked for her name or phone number. She refused to give me either. She said it was none of my business. She insisted she bought it here and deserved a refund. I explained that without a receipt or any way to verify the purchase, I could not process a return. I added that, even if I could find it. Our return window was 30 days, and this blender looked like it had been used for months. Karen started yelling about customer service and how the customer is always right. She threatened to call corporate. She said she would get me fired. I stayed calm. I repeated that I could not help her without proof of purchase or at least some way to verify she bought it from our store. She really lost it. She started screaming that I was discriminating against her. She claimed I was refusing service because of how she looked. She demanded I process the return immediately or she would sue. Other customers were staring. Jenny looked terrified. I had to shut this down. I told Karen very clearly that I was not refusing service. I explained that I was following company policy that applied to every customer equally. I said if she could provide any proof of purchase or even just her name for me to look up in our system, I would be happy to help. She grabbed the blender and threw it at me. It missed and crashed into a display behind me. Glass and plastic went everywhere. I told her she needed to leave immediately or I would call the police. Karen screamed that she was not going anywhere. She said I could not make her leave. She pulled out her phone and started recording me. She announced she was filming this whole thing and it would be all over social media. I pulled out my phone too. I called the police right in front of her. I reported that we had a customer who had thrown merchandise and was refusing to leave the premises. Her eyes went wide. She said I could not do that. She claimed she was the victim here. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. 2 officers came in. Karen immediately ran up to them. She told them I had refused to serve her and discriminated against her. She said I had verbally abused her. The officers looked at me. I explained what had happened. I offered to show them the security footage. One officer asked Karen why she threw the blender. She stammered that she had not thrown anything. She said it had slipped from her hands. The officer pointed at the security camera directly above us. He asked if she was sure about that story. Karen went quiet for a second. Then she said even if she did throw it, it was because I had provoked her. She claimed it was self-defense. The other officer asked her to step outside. Karen refused. She said she had rights. She declared she was not going anywhere until she got her refund. The first officer told her she was trespassing. He explained that as a private business, we had the right to refuse service and ask her to leave. He said if she did not leave now, she would be arrested. Karen pulled the discrimination card again. She said they were only siding with me because they were all ganging up on her. The officer was not having it. He said this had nothing to do with discrimination. He said she had been asked to leave private property and was refusing. He gave her one more chance to leave on her own. She crossed her arms and said she was not moving. They arrested her right there, handcuffs and everything. She screamed the entire time about her rights and how she was going to sue everyone. When they walked her out, she shouted back at me that I had not heard the last of this. She said her lawyer would be in touch. 2 weeks later, I got served with papers. Karen was suing me personally and the company for discrimination, emotional distress, and unlawful arrest. She was asking for $50,000. My company has a lawyer on retainer. He looked over the case and laughed. He said it was frivolous, but we still had to respond. Here's where Karen messed up. She did not just sue over the store incident. In her complaint, she also claimed that after she was arrested, she was fired from her job because of the negative publicity. She said it was my fault she lost her income. Our lawyer did some digging. Turns out Karen worked as an HR manager at a local company. He found out which company and sent them a letter requesting information about her employment status for the lawsuit. They responded. Karen had not been fired because of the arrest. She had been fired 3 days before the incident at my store. She was terminated for cause, for violating labor laws. She had been forcing her employees to work off the clock. She had been denying people their legally required breaks. She had been retaliating against workers who complained. Her company had been investigating her for weeks. They had documentation, witness statements, everything. Our lawyer filed a motion to dismiss. He attached all the evidence. He pointed out that Karen had lied in her lawsuit. He noted that she had committed perjury. The judge threw out her case, all of it. He sanctioned her for filing a frivolous lawsuit. She had to pay our legal fees, about $12,000. Because she had committed perjury in her lawsuit, the district attorney got involved. They charged her with filing a false police report and perjury, both misdemeanors, but still criminal charges. She pleaded guilty to avoid jail time. She got probation, community service, and a permanent record. Last I heard, she cannot find work anywhere in her field. It turns out when you get fired for labor violations and then get convicted of perjury, people do not want to hire you for HR positions. The blender she threw caused about $300 in damage to our display. Our insurance covered it. She had to pay restitution for that too as part of her plea deal. Jenny still works here. She got a raise. She says that was the craziest shift she ever worked. I was driving with my mom to visit my aunt who lives about 2 hours away. Mom had just gotten back from this self-defense class she'd been taking for the past few months. She's in her late 50s, but she's the type who refuses to be a victim. After her friend got mugged in a parking lot last year, she signed up for these classes and took them seriously. She even started carrying pepper spray in her purse, which I used to tease her about. We left the house around 3:30 p.m. to avoid rush hour traffic. We were on this 2-lane highway just cruising along when this pickup truck came up behind us going way too fast. I was already doing 5 over the speed limit, but that wasn't good enough for this guy. He started riding my bumper so close I couldn't even see his headlights in my rearview mirror. I moved over to let him pass, but instead of just going around us like a normal person, he pulled up next to my window and started yelling something. I couldn't hear him through the closed windows, but I could see his face was bright red and he was gesturing wildly. My mom looked over at him and shook her head. She told me to just ignore him and keep driving. I tried to speed up a little to get away from him, but he matched my speed. He kept pacing us, refusing to either pass or fall back. This went on for maybe 2 minutes before he made his move. Then he did something I still can't believe. He swerved his truck into my lane, clipping my front bumper and sending us spinning toward the shoulder. My heart was in my throat when I fought to control the car. The tires screamed against the asphalt and everything seemed to happen in slow motion. We ended up on the side of the road facing the wrong direction, with the truck pulled up right behind us, blocking us in. I asked my mom if she was okay, my voice shaking with panic. She said she was fine and told me to lock the doors right now. I hit the lock button just when this maniac jumped out of his truck and started storming toward my door. He was a big guy, probably 6'2", wearing a dirty tank top and jeans. His face was still red and he was screaming at us to get out of the car. I told him I was calling 911. He yelled that we thought we could just drive slow in front of him and act like we owned the road. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone. The 911 operator answered and I started explaining what was happening, but I was talking so fast she had to ask me to slow down. My mom was surprisingly calm, reaching into her purse. She told me to stay in the car and not open the door no matter what, but he wasn't waiting for an invitation. He started yanking on my door handle, and when that didn't work, he pulled back his fist and slammed it against my window. The glass held, but I screamed anyway. The operator on the phone asked if we were in immediate danger, and I told her yes, he was trying to break our window. She said officers were already on their way and to stay on the line. He shouted that he'd break the window if we didn't open the door. He hit the window again, harder this time. I could see little stress cracks starting to form in the glass. That's when my mom unbuckled her seatbelt and shifted in her seat. Before I could ask what she was doing, she had her pepper spray in one hand. She told me to roll down my window, just a crack, and to do it on her count of 3. I asked her if she was crazy and said no. She told me to trust her and started counting down from 3. I don't know why I listened, but I cracked the window maybe 2 inches. That was all she needed. She aimed the spray right through the gap and let him have it. The stream hit him square in the eyes, and he immediately started screaming, stumbling backward with his hands over his face. He screamed that she was a horrible woman and that he couldn't see anything. The 911 operator asked what was happening, and I tried to explain through my panic, but my mom wasn't done. She threw open her door with all her strength, and it caught him right in the chest, sending him sprawling onto the gravel. He tried to get up, still rubbing at his eyes, still screaming obscenities. My mom yelled at him to stay down. She got out of the car and I watched in shock when this maniac lunged at her blindly. She sidestepped him like she'd done it 1,000 times, and when he turned toward her again, she kicked him right between the legs. The sound he made wasn't even human. He dropped like a sack of potatoes, curling into a ball on the ground, whimpering and crying. My mom said that was for trying to hurt her daughter. She got back in the car, calm as could be, while this guy rolled around on the ground making sounds like a wounded animal. The operator was still on the line asking if we were safe now. I told her yes, the attacker was on the ground and not getting up anytime soon. She asked me if I'd called 911 yet. I stammered that yes, I had, and they were on their way. She told me to check the dash cam and make sure it got everything. I'd completely forgotten about the dash cams. I installed them front, back, and sides after reading too many stories online about insurance fraud. The whole system cost me around $400, but I figured it was worth it. I pulled up the app on my phone and there it was. Every single second recorded in perfect high definition. Him following too close behind us. Him pacing our car for those 2 minutes. Him forcing us off the road. Him attacking our car. Everything my mom did in self-defense. The police arrived about 10 minutes later, followed shortly by an ambulance. The guy was still on the ground, though he'd stopped screaming and was just crying quietly. 2 officers got out and approached our car first to check on us. The officer who took our statement kept trying not to smile when my mom explained what happened. He told her that what she did was some impressive work and that they'd been trying to catch this guy for weeks. He said the man had pulled this stunt on at least 4 other drivers, but nobody had video evidence before. I asked if he'd really done this before. The officer confirmed that, yes, he had multiple road rage incidents, aggressive driving charges, and assault complaints. He explained they just couldn't make anything stick without proof, but with our footage, this guy was going away for a long time. He added that the pit maneuver alone counted as assault with a deadly weapon. The other officer was talking to the guy who was still on the ground. He tried to claim we'd attacked him first, but the officer just pointed to our dash cams. The paramedics checked him over and said his eyes would recover from the pepper spray in a few hours. They also said he'd have some serious bruising from where the car door hit him and from my mom's kick. They loaded him into the ambulance, still crying. The first officer came back with paperwork for us to sign. He said based on the video evidence, they were arresting him for reckless endangerment, assault, attempted assault with a deadly weapon, and road rage. He mentioned the guy would probably be looking at 3 to 5 years in prison minimum. The officer gave us a card and told us we'd need to come in to make an official statement, but that we were free to go. He also gave us a case number and said we could request copies of our dash cam footage for insurance purposes. When we drove away, my mom finally let out a long breath. She remarked that the whole thing had been pretty exciting. I told her that exciting was one way to put it, and that she'd just taken down a guy twice her size. She smiled and said she'd told me those self-defense classes were worth it. The classes cost her around $200, but she said it was the best money she'd ever spent. We finally made it to my aunt's house around 6 p.m., about an hour later than planned. My aunt took one look at us and knew something had happened. We told her the whole story over dinner, and she couldn't stop hugging my mom. She said she was signing up for self-defense classes too. I've been in warehouse work for about 6 years now. When I first got hired, the old supervisor was pretty laid back. He knew everyone had their assigned tasks, but he also understood that in a warehouse, you need to be flexible. If you see something wrong, you fix it. If a machine starts acting up and you know how to handle it, you handle it. Common sense, really. I spent my first 2 years in receiving before they moved me to the packing station. But before that, I did a 6-month rotation in maintenance support. That's where I learned about the machines. Nothing too complicated, just the basics. How to spot when something's running hot, what certain sounds mean, how to do minor adjustments, the kind of stuff that keeps things running smooth. Then about 3 months ago, our old supervisor retired. Nice guy. Threw him a little party in the break room and everything. The company brought in someone new from outside instead of promoting from within. That should have been the first red flag. The new supervisor showed up on a Monday morning wearing a polo shirt with the company logo and carrying a clipboard. He called a mandatory meeting before first shift started. He introduced himself and told us he wanted to make sure we were all on the same page about how the floor operates. We all just stood there, waiting. He went on about how he'd reviewed the protocols and noticed some inconsistencies in how things had been running. He made it clear that from now on, everyone sticks to their assigned role with no exceptions. If something needs attention and it's not your job, you'll report it and move on. He asked if that was clear. One of the guys from receiving raised his hand and asked, what if it's something small, like if a pallet jack gets stuck or something minor like that? The supervisor cut him off and told him to report it. He explained that maintenance handles equipment issues, receiving handles receiving, and packing handles packing. He said it wasn't complicated. I could see a few people exchanging looks, but nobody argued. First day with a new boss, you don't want to start trouble. The first week was mostly just annoying. People would spot minor issues and have to track down the supervisor, who would then put in a ticket, and maintenance would show up 20 minutes later for something that could have been fixed in 30 seconds. But whatever, not my call. Then came the morning everything went sideways. I was at my packing station scanning boxes and slapping labels on them. The conveyor belt runs right past my area, and just beyond that is one of the older pressing machines. This thing's been around since before I started. It's loud, it's temperamental, but when it works fine. Around 9 in the morning I noticed a weird smell, kind of like burning rubber mixed with hot metal. I looked over and saw a thin stream of smoke coming from the side panel of the pressing machine. I knew exactly what that meant. The belt inside was probably slipping and creating friction. If you catch it early, you can shut it down, let it cool, and adjust the tension. Takes maybe 10 minutes. I'd seen the maintenance guys do it a dozen times. I walked over to find the supervisor. He was in the corner, typing something on his tablet. I told him the pressing machine was smoking and that I thought the belt was slipping. He didn't even look up. He asked if that was my station. I said no, but explained that I used to work with maintenance support and I knew what was happening. He told me not to touch it unless it was my job. I tried to explain that it was going to get worse if someone didn't do something about it soon. He repeated himself more firmly. He said if it's a problem, maintenance will handle it, and told me to go back to my station. I stood there for a second trying to decide if I should push harder, but he'd made himself pretty clear over the past few weeks. Follow protocol. Stay in your lane. I said alright and told him I was just letting him know. I went back to packing. The smell got stronger. The smoke got thicker. I kept scanning boxes and sticking labels on them, watching that machine out of the corner of my eye. A couple of other people noticed too. One of them started walking toward the supervisor's area, but I just shook my head. I told them not to bother because the supervisor said maintenance only. My co-worker said that it didn't look good. I agreed. About 10 minutes later, there was a loud pop, and suddenly there were actual flames coming out of the side of the machine. Not huge, but enough that you couldn't ignore it anymore. Someone hit the emergency shutoff for that section. The alarm started blaring. The supervisor finally looked up from his tablet, saw the fire, and his face went white. He yelled for everyone to get off the floor immediately. We all filed out through the side exit while he scrambled to call maintenance and grab the fire extinguisher. By the time maintenance showed up, the flames were out but the damage was done. The whole inside of that machine was fried. Wiring, belts, circuit boards, all of it. The fire marshal came by to make sure it was safe. Maintenance stood around looking at the wreckage and shaking their heads. Production was shut down for the rest of the day while they cleared the area and ran safety checks. I sat in the break room with everyone else, drinking coffee and waiting to see if they'd send us home early. My co-worker asked if I tried to tell the supervisor what was happening. I said I did. They asked what he said. I told them he said not to touch it unless it was my job. My co-worker said it was unbelievable. The next morning there was another meeting, and the supervisor stood in front of us, looking a lot less confident than he had 3 months ago. He announced that going forward, if anyone sees a safety issue, they should address it immediately or escalate it until someone does. He said to use our judgment. Nobody said anything. We just nodded and went to our stations. They quietly dropped the whole stay in your lane speech after that. The supervisor stopped carrying his clipboard around everywhere. He still works here, but he's a lot quieter now. As for me, I just kept doing my job, packing boxes, scanning labels, and keeping an eye on the machines. I'm a security guard at a small office building in the downtown business district. We only have 42 spaces total, and every single one is assigned to either tenants or their employees. That day, I clocked in at 7 a.m. and started my morning rounds at 7:15. When I got to the main lot, I noticed a black car parked across 2 spots right by the entrance. Not just a little over the line. This thing was dead center between spaces 12 and 13, like someone had measured it out on purpose. I walked over to check it out. No permit visible on the dashboard. No disability placard hanging from the mirror. Just an expensive car with temporary tags taking up prime real estate in our already cramped lot. I took a photo and made a note of the time. 7:23 a.m. About an hour later, I got a call from reception. Someone was complaining about not being able to find parking. I headed back outside, and sure enough, there were 3 cars circling the lot. One of them was Janet from the accounting firm on the 3rd floor. She had been circling for 10 minutes trying to find a spot, all because of that car. I told her I was handling it, and she could park in the loading zone temporarily. I decided to wait around and see who the owner was. Didn't have to wait long. Around 9 a.m. this woman came walking out of the building carrying fancy shopping bags from stores that weren't even in our building. She was dressed like she was heading to a country club instead of leaving an office building. Full makeup, heels that clicked on the pavement, jewelry that caught the sunlight. I walked up to her and told her that she was parked across 2 spaces. She stopped and looked at me like I had just told her the sky was green. Then she told me that she parked that way to protect her vehicle from door dings. She said her car was worth more than I made in a year, so I should mind my own business. I kept my cool and told her that parking enforcement was literally my business. I said she needed to move her vehicle to a single space or park in the public lot 3 blocks down the street. She laughed in my face. She told me she knew the building owner personally and that I was just a rent-a-cop who couldn't do anything about it. She said she had an important meeting and didn't have time for this nonsense. Then she got in her car and drove off. But here's the thing, she didn't leave the property. I watched her circle around to the back lot. She just moved to another spot near the rear entrance and parked across 2 spaces again. Spaces 31 and 32 this time. Different location, same entitled behavior. I walked back there and took more photos. Documented the new location with timestamps 9:07 a.m. Then I called our building manager. His name is Rick and he's been managing this property for 12 years. He told me to handle it however I saw fit within the rules. He also mentioned that he had never heard of this woman and definitely wasn't friends with her. Our parking lot is private property. We have clearly posted signs at both entrances about parking violations and unauthorized use. The signs list the rules and the phone number for our contracted towing company. We also have a contract with a towing company that's been working with us for 5 years. I called them up. They said they could be there in 20 minutes. I went back to my office and pulled up the visitor log. She had signed in at 8:45 a.m. as a guest of Hartman Industries on the 4th floor. I made a note of it. The woman came back out about 15 minutes later. It was 9:30 a.m. when she walked into the back lot. I was standing near her car with the tow truck driver. His name was Mike and we had worked together on situations like this before. Her face went from annoyed to furious in about 2 seconds. She started yelling about how I couldn't do this and demanding to speak to my supervisor. She said she was going to have me fired and that I had no authority to tow her car. She said she had only been parked there for 45 minutes. I let her finish her rant. Then I told her that the lot was private property with posted rules. I said she had been warned once already at 9 a.m. and chose to continue violating our parking policy by moving to a different spot and doing the same thing. I said the tow was happening regardless of her objections. She threatened to call the police. I handed her my phone and told her to go ahead. She didn't take it. The tow truck driver hooked up her car while she stood there fuming. He told her which impound lot her car would be at and how much it would cost to retrieve it. Over $320 plus a daily storage fee of $50. She said this was ridiculous and that she would be speaking to the building owner about my behavior. She said they were close personal friends and that I would regret this. I told her the building manager had already approved the tow. I also mentioned that the building manager said he had never heard of her. Her face went pale for just a second before the anger came back. Then I offered to call her a cab since she no longer had transportation. She pulled out her phone and walked off without another word. I watched her pace back and forth in the parking lot for 10 minutes while she talked on her phone. She kept looking over at me and pointing. Here's where it gets better. Around 11 a.m. I got a call from Rick. It turns out the woman didn't actually know the building owner. She was there for a job interview at Hartman Industries on the 4th floor. She had been shopping before the interview, which explained the bags and why she showed up 45 minutes early. The HR person from Hartman Industries called Rick around 10:30 a.m. to apologize. Her name was Susan and she sounded embarrassed. She said they had no idea their candidate would behave that way and assured him she didn't get the job. During her interview, she had bragged about knowing the building owner and how she could park wherever she wanted. She told them that some security guard was harassing her and had her car towed for no reason. When they asked her about it, she told the whole story and painted herself as a victim of an aggressive security guard. The interviewer thought it sounded odd, so she called Rick to verify the story. He filled them in on what actually happened. He told them about the double parking, the warning, her moving to another spot and doing it again, and the contract we have with the towing company. They ended the interview right there. Susan said they were looking for someone to manage client relations, and this behavior was completely unacceptable for that role. She also tried to file a complaint with our management company about me. She called them that same afternoon around 2 p.m. That went nowhere since I had followed protocol perfectly and had photo documentation of everything. Time-stamped photos, witness statements from Janet who couldn't find parking, and the visitor log showing when she arrived. The management company actually sent me an email thanking me for handling the situation professionally. 2 weeks later, I saw her walking through our parking lot. It was a Thursday afternoon around 1 p.m. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt and carrying a food delivery bag. She was delivering food for one of those apps. She saw me standing near the entrance, turned bright red, and practically ran back to her car. She parked in a single space that time. Space number 7 in the visitor section. I watched her drop off the food and leave within 5 minutes. I never saw her vehicle take up 2 spots again. In fact, I never saw her in anything but a beat-up sedan after that. The temporary tags were gone and it had regular plates. I'm guessing the impound fees of $320 plus losing out on what was probably a good job opportunity made her rethink her priorities. Hartman Industries pays their client relations managers around $70,000 a year, according to the job posting I saw in the building newsletter. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.